Greetings to another DRBA Lunch with DRBA webinar. And I'm your host, Brian Williams. I'm the program manager for Dan River Basin Association in Virginia. And today we've got hopefully a topic that you're going to enjoy. So we're kind of waiting around just a minute to make sure we get everybody on there. It looks like everybody's coming on now. If you haven't used Zoom before, it's pretty great, but it can be a little bit complicated. So I'm going to be switching back and forth between live feed and my screen to give this presentation. So if you haven't used Zoom before, if you'll have a window up there with me on it. You have an icon in the top right corner where you can enter full screen. You can go down to the bottom with your cursor and you can see a menu of options. All you guys are muted. However, you can chat with me. There's a chat box down there. If you click on that, you can type a question in and it'll pop up and I'll answer it as soon as I can. We'll try to take some questions and answers at the end of the session as well, but you can go ahead and feel free to go ahead and type your question in while you're thinking about it. If I can get to it during the middle of the presentation, I will. So that's basic housekeeping. We are recording this broadcast, so if you have an issue with that, just to let you know that we are recording the broadcast. It will be available on our YouTube channel. We'll send out a link to participants. You can change, once again, you can change this Zoom from on your screen from speaker view to any kind of view you really want. You can reduce it down. When I pull up the slides, you can reduce my face down if you want to, or leave it up in the top right-hand corner. If you're familiar with Zoom, it'll be a little bit easier to do. And once again, I'll send out a link to the DRBA website. So we're going to kind of go back and forth here, but right now I'm going to pull up a presentation and share this screen. So you should be seeing a presentation here in a minute. Now there is a little bit of lag times sometimes when we're doing this. So I might be waiting just a minute to bring this screen up. It may take just a minute for you to see it on your screen. So hopefully we do have our presentation up there now. And once again, this is from the Dan River Basin Association. And our mission here is preserving and promoting the culture and natural resources of Dan River Basin. And we do that through stewardship, education, and recreation. So one of the things that we do is we get people out on the river, we get them out on the trails and show them what's out there as far as our natural resources. And we know if we get them out there, they're going to love it. And then they're going to become good stewards of it. And they're going to learn more about it. So part of our program today is education. And we do this a lot at schools. We do this with trout releases. We work with MHC After 3, all kinds of groups all over the place, promoting outdoor recreation, promoting trails, promoting macroinvertebrates, water quality testing. And my favorite thing, of course, is snakes. So we're going to talk about snakes today. I'm going to jump right into it here. And once again, if you need to reduce me on the side there, go ahead. You can bring it back up. You can mess around with this as much as you want to. Now, I may not see all your questions right away, but I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. So this is one of my favorite quotes from Aldo Leopold. It says, "The last word in ignorance is the man who says of an animal or plant, what good is it? You know, if the land mechanisms as a whole are as good, then every part is good, whether we understand it or not." So a lot of times when people say the only good snake is a dead snake, obviously that raises my hackles up a little bit, but it's ignorance. It's not understanding what's going on. So we're going to try to dispel some of those myths and talk about what's going on. And once again, I'm Brian Williams, for those that haven't met me before. And as you can see, I've loved snakes all my life. I was 6 or 7 years old when my dad got me an indigo snake, the largest snake in North America, and I was absolutely thrilled. My parents hated snakes, but they let me keep them, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then I worked at the zoo in Atlanta. I worked in the reptile department there. That's a bushmaster. That's the largest, the snake with the largest venomous snake with the largest fangs in the world. Pretty cool. And then, of course, your typical pet store Burmese python there. And a lot of people ask, you know, well, what about your wife? Is she, you know, does she like snakes? Does she care? She doesn't really like snakes a whole lot or care about my hobby, but she has done her own programs here. So this is Patty back when she was a park ranger doing her own programs with snakes. So she's very comfortable with them, although she always thinks I have too many at home. So basically, in my opinion, they're fascinating and they're feared, but it's mainly because they're misunderstood. It's like anything else. When you don't understand something, it immediately becomes kind of in that fear pocket. because you just don't know. So we've been heard all our lives about why snakes are terrible and how bad they are and all that kind of mythology. And we're going to explore that just real quickly here. So why we are fearful of snakes? Well, number one, it's kind of an innate instinct. When you hear something go like that, you immediately kind of jump up. That's why we use that a lot. And that we equate that with snakes. And it's a natural habit to a reflex habitat for a protection thing. So you're immediately on edge. So we hear that all the time. That always puts us on edge, and we think snakes are running around doing that, but it's just kind of a little key. So it's kind of innate in our behavior. Of course, cartoons, movies, all that kind of stuff. The biblical references, obviously, you know, with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and the snake being bad, we see the snake handlers there in the churches. So we've got a lot of social connotations that make us not like snakes. Especially my favorite is Hollywood. You know, we all remember Harrison Ford going, snakes, why did it have to be snakes? I hate snakes. Snakes on a plane, anaconda. From Disney movies to everything else, snakes are they're turned into the villain. So we know from growing up, we're inundated with this, and it makes us naturally fearful of snakes. We love to be afraid of snakes, sharks, everything else like that. The way to overcome that is with knowledge, and we do this with the kids all the time. It's fantastic when I see kids that are a little fearful at first when I bring snakes out, and then they come around, and usually I can have them holding snakes by the time everything's over with, at least touching a snake, and help eliminate those fears, because we don't want people killing snakes. You know, snakes are an important part of the environment. So recognizing snakes, what they are, that they're not out to get us, they're not out to chase us, it makes us understand them and appreciate them, and therefore we can protect them like we should be protecting everything on our planet, wildlife, natural resources. So this time of year, snakes start coming out. It's starting to get warmer. We see a lot more snakes in April, May, and then in the heat of the summer, you don't see them as much. You might see them crossing the road at night, but it gets kind of hot. And then we start seeing them again in the fall. So some snakes breed in the spring, some snakes breed in the fall. Some snakes have babies in the spring, some snakes have babies in the fall. So this time of year, we always start seeing a lot more snakes, and every day someone's texting me a photo saying, what kind of snake is this? So one of the things we're going to do today is look at all these different snakes and try to give you some keys to figuring out what they are and how to avoid them. So snakes are reptiles. They're includes lizards and turtles. They're cold-blooded animals. Their body temperature changes with the temperature of their surroundings. And there's more than 2,900 species, roughly, in the world, and they live just about everywhere: deserts, forests, oceans. Not so much in Antarctica and the colder climes. Mostly around the equator, you're going to find more and bigger snakes. They live in the trees, the ground, the water, everywhere. They live in our neighborhood. They live with us. They live it's cool, the fact that we are surrounded by snakes. And it's really cool, the fact that we're surrounded by snakes and still have them, and they do not interact with humans as much as we might think that they do. So the difference between the reptiles and the amphibians: the reptiles have the dry, scaly skin. Their skin's actually underneath this protective layer of scales. They can lay eggs. They can have a hard, leathery shell. I'm going to show you some of those. They can also bear live young. The amphibians, they have the smooth, moist skin, kind of sticky a lot of times, sometimes not. The toads are rough and dry, but they have mucus glands on them. An amphibian means living two lives, land and water. So they need some type of water to reproduce, whether it's laying their eggs in the water and metamorphosizing from a tadpole into a frog, or sometimes just an egg encased with moisture in it, like a salamander in a moist environment. So the earth is absolutely crawling with reptiles, which is fantastic for somebody like me, not fantastic for a lot of other people, but I love it. 8240 roughly worldwide in reptiles, 2,900 of those are snakes. 32 of those species live in Virginia. So we're lucky enough to have 32 of those in our state. I used to live in Florida. We had more than that down there, which was wonderful to me. So some snakes, as I mentioned before, lay eggs. Some bear live young. They're ovoviviparous. If they lay eggs, they're viviparous if they have young. A lot of times the venomous snakes, most of the venomous snakes will have live young. King cobras are an exception. exception to that. They'll lay eggs. And then most of the boas and pythons will have some eggs, and some will actually have live young. A lot of water snakes will have live young. Copperheads, they have live young, but they're in a sac when they come out. They have to break through that sac. So they have a unique way of reproducing based on their environment, basically. And what good are they? We always get that. Well, any snake's a good snake to some people. Any dead snake's a good snake to some people, but they're a critical part of the environment. Rodent control is the primary thing we always talk about, but they do take care of a lot of that. Our food source would be in great jeopardy if it wasn't for reptiles. But regardless of how you feel about them, you know, you need to realize they're an important part of the ecosystem, and they're a fragile part of it, and can be an indicator of when things start going bad. And the other reason is because we love them. I mean, look at these kids. They just absolutely, it doesn't look like they actually love them right here, but trust me, these kids love these snakes. Once they get to holding them and understanding them, then they really become more accustomed to the snakes, and they learn a new experience that they hadn't seen before. It's one of my favorite things to do, is talk to young adults and kids about snakes and get them excited to touch one, hold one that they may have never had. And then when they come upon one in the wild, they're less likely to be fearful of it or even want to kill it. And we have snakes in our office too. Here's Krista and Julie. And we have, every once in a while when I have snake programs, I always have some in the office, and people like to come down and check them out. Krista's holding a northern water snake there, and Julie's holding a black rat snake. So how big do these guys get? Well, let's run over that real quick. What's the biggest snake in the world? That's up in the air. It could be a green anaconda, could be a reticulated python, could be an African rock. But the green anaconda gets pretty big. And I'm always going to throw these scientific names up here too, so you can write them down if you want to. You can see this video on YouTube. You can Google these things. There's so much information out there. When I was a kid, I had library. That's what I had. And I had the encyclopedia. And I have every single book I ever checked out as a kid. I own those books now. So I love books, but the internet's fantastic. It's at our fingertips. Facebook has all kinds of snake identification things. There's no reason not to get a snake identification within just a few minutes when you need one. So the anaconda can get up to 20, 25 feet. They say it gets up to 30 feet, but those have been unverified. And 300 to 500 pounds, obviously a monster snake. And these guys live down around the equator, where the growing season is all year round. So they've got time to eat. Since they're cold-blooded, they have to have that warmth to digest their food. So that's why you have snakes in colder climes that actually hibernate and brumate and stay underground several months out of the year, depending on the climate they're in. Whereas anacondas, pythons, all the stuff that lives around the equator, they don't have to do that. So they can get enormous. The African rock python, another big contender, 15 to 18 feet, 130, 300 pounds. A pretty bad disposition on these guys. I've kept a few of them. I've kept the green anacondas and the African rocks, and both of them have what you might call a nasty disposition. The reticulated python, also a massive animal, 22 feet, 300 to 400 pounds. Here, Boyd Maston from National Geographic with a pretty good snake. I think the snake is about 18 feet. But you can see just how massive these things are. Could they swallow a person? Sure, when they get that big, they can swallow a person, but they don't feed on people, so that's a good thing. And then we have tiny ones. This is a Barbados thread snake. We have a lot of different types of thread snakes, blind snakes, worm snakes. It can be very small. This is one of the smallest in the world. You can see it on a quarter here. Really a fascinating animal. You can barely tell which is the head and which is the tail. So they can be really tiny. Do they bite? Sure, anything with teeth and a mouth can bite. But that's not what they're out there to do. This picture actually is from a photographer that was taking a picture of this carpet python. So you get close enough and get in their zone, yeah, they can bite. But you know, guess what? We do too. We bite. You see the cobras in the jar there. We make snake bourbon or liquor out of them. We eat them. Many people despise snakes. They'll go out of their way to run over a snake and kill a snake. Of course, you're more likely to get bit when you're trying to kill a snake. My wife used to work in a hospital, and she'd always check, this was in Gainesville, Florida, and she'd always check the charts when people come in with a snake bite. 99% of the time, the chart read, you know, subject was trying to scare someone with a snake, trying to catch it, holding it by the tail. It's always, the human's fault. It's rarely the snake's fault that you get bit. So what do they eat? Well, a variety of stuff, from eggs to hogs, like you see here, to other snakes, to lizards, to birds. They can be quite specialized in their feeding. There's some queen snakes. I'm going to show you a video here in a little bit that love crayfish, and they love crayfish when they're molting. And those snakes live around here. So you get a crayfish that's in the process of shedding its shell and it gets really soft. The queen snakes love that. Some snakes, like the rainbow snake, they feed on amphumas, which is like a big long eel with legs. So they can be very specialized feeders, and some of them are just all out garbage disposals that'll eat mice, rats, birds, lizards, other snakes, whatever they come across. They don't all eat other snakes, though. We're going to talk about that too. The cool thing about them, another cool thing, their tongue, they're super sensors. They don't smell. They have nostrils, obviously, up here, and you can see that, their nostrils, but they taste with their tongue, and they have what's called a Jacobson organ in the inside of their mouth. So they're sticking their tongue out, constantly picking up particles in the air, bringing them back in, and that's the way they smell when they're actually tasting. All right, so what kind of snake is that? And I'm kind of watching my time over here. I don't want to run past, and I want to have time for some questions and answers. And we're also going to look at some live animals too. But we get this all the time. One of the things I spend a lot of time doing is answering what kind of snake this is. People sending me a picture. And once again, it's pretty easy to find something online. I highly recommend, you'll see at the end of this slideshow, the Virginia Herpetological Society. Just type in snakes of Virginia. It'll pop right up. Beautiful site, got everything that lives in Virginia. And you can do the same thing for North Carolina, but since we're on the border of Virginia and North Carolina, we have many of the same types of snakes. It's only when you go over to the coast or go over to the mountains that you're going to have more of a variety. So it's quick and easy to scroll down through a list of these snakes and see if it's venomous or non-venomous and what kind it is. So let's start with that. Is it venomous? Well, we got a photo right here that most people would look at that and say, yeah, my gosh, that's a venomous snake. It's got an elliptical pupil. It's got some fangs. It must be venomous. Of course, it's not. It's just a young green tree python. They have a lot of long teeth in there because they feed on birds. They do have a bit of an elliptical pupil, so that's not one way to gauge snakes. But we are going to look at the different ways to tell venomous from non-venomous. Now, this is a famous thing that's in almost every herp book, and we try not to use this a lot, but I'm going to show it to you because you will see this a lot. You'll see this pictured as non-venomous snakes with elliptical pupil, round pupil, venomous snakes with elliptical pupil. Behind the anal plate on the snake's skin, you'll see divided anal scales. That doesn't work on all of those. This works in North America. It doesn't work everywhere. Behind the anal plate of a venomous one, it'll go all the way across. So in other words, if you find a shed skin, you can be able to tell what it is here anyway from that, whether it's venomous or non-venomous. So you'll see this a lot, but this is just some of the keys of how to identify them. There's not one single thing. When people say, how do I tell? Oh, it's got a triangle head. Well, of course, we know that that's not the exact way to tell either. Here's a garter snake. It's got a pretty good triangle head right there. It's not venomous. I mean, it's going to give you a nasty bite, and they also have kind of a nasty disposition. They eat a lot of frogs and toads and things like that. So when you get bit by a garter snake, you're probably going to get a little bit of swelling, but it's not venomous. What else got a triangle head? Well, most people would look at this and say it's a water moccasin. Of course, it's not. It's just a northern water snake, but certainly has a nice triangle shaped head there. Here's an eastern rat snake, or what we call a black rat snake around here. When it's in a defensive posture and it's ready to strike, it's going to flatten that head out and make it into a triangle. Here's the same type of snake here, not in a defensive posture. You can see that it has a normal head shape. It's not flattened out at all. They also will rattle their tails. Almost every single snake will rattle their tail, whether you got a rattle on the end of it or not. It rattles in the leaves. It rattles in the bushes. They're trying to make you think it's a rattlesnake. Plus, they're just telling you, hey, I'm really mad. Leave me alone. How about elliptical pupils? Well, here's a copperhead. This is one of the snakes that we have around here, Agkistrodon piscivorus, and you can see an elliptical pupil right there. Here's a copperhead. It's got kind of more of a round pupil. I tell people, if you're close enough to look at the pupils, you're probably too close, So another cool thing that I love about snakes is their patterns. They're beautiful patterns wherever you go. So here's a trail. This is in my backyard, actually, a trail behind my house. And there's a copperhead in this photograph. You probably can't see it, but we're gonna show it to you. So I don't know if you see my cursor or not, but it's right there. And if you zoom in, you'll see how well this guy blends in with the leaves, the fall foliage. Just, I mean, super cryptic coloration. I think that's the neatest thing there is. And here he is a little bit closer up. So now we can actually tell that it's a venomous snake. And one of the keys on copperheads, you know, we've only got 3 venomous snakes that live in our area, or live in Virginia. We have the timber rattlesnake, we have the copperhead, and then we have the water moccasin. Now, the water moccasin or cottonmouth lives way over in the coast, so you're not going to have to worry about that in our region. So the only 2 ones that you really need to be able to identify is the copperhead and the timber rattlesnake. The copperhead is super easy because everything is mistaken for a copperhead. But if you look at this guy, you see the hourglass pattern on the back. A lot of people also say they're the Hershey kisses. So you can see how the pattern looks like a Hershey's kiss right here. So that's kind of one thing we try to tell people to look for. They have that eyebrow, deep pits on their nostrils. I mean, this is just an impressive animal and so easily recognized even as a baby. So let's talk a little bit about snakes in Virginia and what you're liable to find around here. And once again, in North Carolina too, being that we're right on the border. This is up at, I think this photo was taken at Dragon's Tooth, big black rat snake crossing the road with some friends of mine. And that's the most common snake we're going to find here in Virginia is the eastern black rat snake. Panthropus alleghaniensis. It used to be Elafe was the genus, and it was Obsoleta was the species. They've changed that in the last 20 years. It's very confusing now. So when people see a black rat snake and you call it a black rat, it's an eastern rat snake. But what they did was they did a lot of taxonomic studies to figure out the gray rats, the black rats, the western rats, the corn snakes. So this is a typical black rat in Virginia, big, black, big, beautiful animal. And I'm going to show you one of those later here. We've got the juvenile of the species. A lot of people mistake that for a copperhead. Northern black racer, also called a black snake here. A lot of differences though, smooth scales, real satiny as opposed to the real shiny of the black rat. The red rat snake also lives here. And up here in each one of these photos, you'll see a range map. This is a great way to know what you're looking at. Just look it up online, type in black rat snake range map. Look at the Virginia Herpetological Society. It's going to show you all the counties that this snake has been found in. So we're over in here in Henry County, and it doesn't show any corn snakes for that, but it shows them. I mean, I've found them in Franklin County, just over the line. So it's always can be updated, but it's more of a general idea of where they have found. It's a beautiful snake. People mistake these for a copperhead. I don't know how. I think they're just not looking close enough. Once again, here's the new nomenclature for rat snakes. So we have this area where we're in, which is called the area of uncertainty, which used to be called intergrades, in between a black rat, a gray rat, a yellow rat. Sometimes these guys would interbreed and you'd get black rats that have a really nice pattern on them. It just depends on where they are. Down in Florida, we had these, what we called gray rats. We call them eastern rats now, but they were just beautiful checkered pattern all the way to adulthood. So it's a little confusing. So I have a little thing I put online. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it basically says when somebody asks me if it's what kind of snake it is, I start explaining the whole thing to them and how we have intergrades and the different species. And then they finally ask, okay, what kind of snake it is? Oh, it's a black rat. Okay. So here's a black racer. Once again, it's found almost everywhere in Virginia. Differs from the black rat in a lot of different ways. One of the ways you can see that eyebrow up there, great big huge eyes, and the coloration is key. These kind of things, when you look at them all the time, you know what they are right away. To a lay person just looking at them, it's best to look them up online. That's also confused for a copperhead. That's a baby black racer. Looks a lot different than the adult, but I get those all the time. Must be a copperhead. No, it's a baby black racer. Northern ring snake, very common snake around here. We have southern ringnecks as well. They have the obvious ring around them. They're satin black. They got a ring. They got an orange belly or a yellow belly. Beautiful. Pretty obvious, easy one to name. The worm snake, we see that a lot around here, the eastern worm snake. And we also have a smooth snake. I didn't put everything up here that you're going to see, but these are the more common things that you're going to see. Shiny, little bitty tiny head, little bitty eyes. People mistake these for worms all the time, but then they look at them and see the scales and realize it's a snake. The eastern garter snake, a lot of those around. People see those all the time. I hear them called gardener snakes. It's actually garter snake because the ones that are heavily checked kind of reminded someone of a woman's garter, the lace pattern on the garter, so that's why they're called garter snakes. They're found all over the country. We have a wide variety of garter snakes. They eat a lot of frogs, toads, salamanders. You find them around ponds. You find them in wet environments. You find them in dry environments. Very common snake. Eastern hognose, really neat snake. This is the one that plays dead, also flattens his head out. They call them the southern puffing adder, the southern cobra, all kinds of different things. We have 3 species of those in the United States, the eastern, the western, and the southern. We don't have any southern here. We have them a little bit further south, but predominantly this is out at Gravelly Nature Preserve. We see a lot of the black, the melanistic looking pattern ones, but you can also find them like this too. They're highly variable, beautiful snake. Specialized eater, they eat toads. Their rear fang, they have a fang in the back of their mouth that punctures the toad, because when a toad is approached to be eaten by a snake, it's going to puff up and blow up and try not to be eaten. So what the hognose snake does is grab that toad and get it in his mouth, and those back fangs puncture the toad and let all the air out so he can swallow it. Seems a little gruesome, but highly specialized feeder. Another one that people always mistake for copperhead is the DeKay's brown snake. This is a small snake. It's about maybe 15 inches tops. We find these in a lot of varieties, a lot of different colorations, but a common snake you find out in your yard, and people constantly send me photos of this. Sometimes they're already chopped up with a shovel, which is unfortunate, but obviously not a copperhead. There's a DeKay snake with a bunch of little babies. All those babies could probably fit all of those on a quarter. Pretty cool little snake. They do have a nice little musk that when you pick them up, and a lot of snakes do that. When you pick them up, their defense mechanism is a musk, and they also defend themselves by biting. This is the one northern water snake. We have a lot of these around here. This is the one everyone confuses with a cottonmouth or a water moccasin. We don't have cottonmouths and water moccasins. We have them over in the far reaches of the Dismal Swamp over in the eastern corner of Virginia. So they kind of look like that. People see them on the side of the bank. They see this brownish black snake, maybe a little bit of pattern on it, triangle looking head, and immediately it's a water moccasin. No, we don't have them here. Here's another northern water snake, really nice pattern on this one. You can see its head doesn't look very triangle, but still looks a little bit triangle there. We have the brown water snake, but it lives way over on the East Coast. People mistake these for water moccasins all the time. Obviously, got the pattern, it's in the water, it must be a water moccasin. Nah, it's a brown water snake. Queen snakes, we have them here. Pretty neat snake, highly specialized crayfish eater. Brownish gray, you see them hanging on the side of the bushes and trees, and they drop into the water, and people go, oh, it must be a water moccasin. Look, it was black. No, it's just a queen snake. Eastern milksnake, another one that's confused for copperheads all the time. Beautiful snake. They call them milk snakes because they used to be found in barns, and people think they were milking cows and things like that. The Lampropeltis genus includes a lot of different types of king snakes. This one happens to be Lampropeltis triangulum, eastern milk snake. We have the Lampropeltis triangulum elapisoides, which is a scarlet king snake, and you can see it's found in Virginia, and they're finding it more and more in different places. So that's why that is a circle there and not complete just counties, because they're still updating the range map on the Scarlet Kingsnake. Here it is eating one of its favorite foods, 5-line skink with a blue tail. And then we have the northern scarlet snake, which looks very similar. The Scarlet Kings, the pattern wraps all the way around them. With the scarlet snake, they have pretty much a white belly. That's the way to tell them out. But they're fossorial. They like to bury under the ground. You don't see them a whole lot. We have them here, but I've never even found one in this county. The eastern Kingsnake, I've never found one in this county. Found them a lot across the line in North Carolina. And a lot of these bigger snakes, we don't find as much anymore because they are big and they're easy to see and people kill them. But the Lampropeltis getulus is the same thing as all the other king snakes as far as the genus goes. They're constrictors. All these guys will eat other snakes. So when you hear people talk about, oh, don't kill it, it's a black snake, it's going to keep venomous snakes away. It's not going to keep venomous snakes away, but it will eat them. However, the black rat snake does not eat venomous snakes. The black racer does. So every time you see a posting on Facebook with someone going, hey, that's a black snake, that's a good snake, don't kill it, it chases away venomous snakes. And well, I guess it will let people think that, so they won't kill them, but that's not exactly the case, because black rat snakes used to be called pilot rat snakes because they found them in the same dens with timber rattlesnakes and copperheads. And the old wives' tale in the Appalachians was that the pilot snakes would guide the copperheads and the timber rattlesnakes to these dens. So they don't eat what they're denning up with. The rough green snake, we have roughs and smooths. Mostly you're going to see the rough green snake, very common snake. You don't see them a lot because of their incredible camouflage. But if you do see a green snake around here, they usually have like a yellow chin, a yellow belly. That's what you're looking at. If you find one of these long slender snakes and it's blue and it's dead, it's because it's losing the green pigmentation in it and it's turning blue. So before they get start decomposing, you'll see this snake and it'll be like just this really weird color of blue. That's a green snake that's lost its coloration when it's died. Northern copperhead, once again, very common snake. You find them in the backyard. You find them around houses all the time. They're not aggressive. They're not going to bite you. People generally do not die from a copperhead bite unless you have an allergic reaction, similar to a bee sting. You can have anaphylactic shock from any of these, but it's a very mild bite. Most people that get bit by copperheads do not need antivenom. They can even ride the bite out. It is a necrotic venom, so it does destroy tissue. The coral snakes and the elapids, like cobras and things like that, have a neurotoxic venom. And then some of the snakes in South America and other places have hemotoxic and neurotoxic both. They have a combination, which is just wonderful. You can stop breathing and get your arm rotted off at the same time. But here in Virginia, we have the timber rattlesnake and the northern copperhead. Both of those are venomous from the time that they're babies. But the babies do not have a more powerful venom than the adults. That's another wise tale. What they have is the desire to bite something and put a full load of venom in it so they don't lose it. So that's what babies are doing when they bite. Adults, you can have a dry bite from one. It can bite you just as a behavior to say, hey, put me down, and not give you a load of venom because they don't want to waste it. They don't want to break the fangs off. They don't want to waste the venom. So you can actually have a dry bite from these, whereas the babies, you're probably going to get a load of venom. It's not that much more. It's definitely not any more toxic than the adults. This is what a baby copperhead looks like. We see these all the time. They're light colored. This time of year, you'll see them. You'll see them in the fall mainly. But they have that little bright yellow or green tail, which is a caudal lure. So they stick that tail up in the air and they wiggle it around to attract things like toads and small lizards and even small mice and stuff. And then when it gets close enough to figure out that's not a worm, it's too late. Another way, just to let you know how these guys feed, their venom is a specialized saliva. So what they're doing is they're biting something and it's starting to digest that animal as the animal runs away. And then the snake just takes its time. It follows the scent trail to where the animal is and the animal's dead, and then the snake can swallow it. Whereas constrictors, they grab, hold on, like the king snakes, the pythons, the boas, they're going to grab their prey, hold on, wrap it up, squeeze it real tight until all the air is gone, and then they can feel it stop moving, and then they're going to go and find the head and start swallowing them. That's the way the constrictors work, whereas these guys don't do that. They bite and let go. The black racers, oh, you should see a black racer eat. That's incredible. They're not constrictors. They just grab something and start swallowing it. It's amazing. You can still be alive and flipping around and going in circles, and they'll just start swallowing it as soon as they can get it. Now, here's a water moccasin that does live in Virginia, obviously. But we're going to talk about this. This is what people confuse with the northern water snakes all the time. When you see a water moccasin, if it's in the water, it's generally going to be on top of the water. They like to swim on top of the water. Can they go under the water? Sure. Can they bite you underwater? Yeah, they can do that too. But generally, if you see something with its complete body swimming across the top of the water, that's probably a water moccasin. But guess what? Northern water snakes can do that too. So don't just immediately say that because you see that. Normally, you're going to see a northern water snake with its head just out of the water or swimming on the surface, making a big wake, whereas the water moccasins, you will generally see them floating on top of the water. And this shows you why we do not have them here. We are over here in Henry County right now, and here's North Carolina down here. And this does extend into North Carolina, and as it goes further south, more into South Carolina, all of Florida, South Georgia, and then they go up the Mississippi drainage basin with the western cottonmouths all the way up into Illinois. But they are very specific geographic ranges, so we do not find them here. If you find one here, it's because somebody brought one here and let it go, which is probably not going to happen. Very distinctive animal, big blocky head, eye stripe, big pits on the side of the head. I mean, this is it's just the pit bull of snakes. This is the head, the body shape, and everything is just a dead giveaway that it's a venomous animal. And you can see here, once again, the confusion. This is a water moccasin here. Here's a water moccasin. They call them cottonmouth because when they open their mouth, they got the white lining on the inside of the mouth. Well, other snakes have that as well. Here's a northern water snake. Both of these are local. Both of these are Florida specimens because I used to live in Florida. These are local snakes, right, found right on the Smith River. So you can see how that, you can see how that can be confused, especially at a glance. But if you take a closer look, it's pretty obvious. And knowing where they live is huge, and it's key. Timber rattlesnake, we have not as many of those as I'd like to see around here. Unfortunately, they're a big, heavy-bodied snake. They do get killed a lot. We do have them in the county. We have them in Franklin County and all up through the Appalachian, the Blue Ridge, all the way up to Pennsylvania, New York, Maine. This snake used to be, as you went further south in Georgia and South Carolina, they called them canebrake rattlesnakes. It used to be Crotalus, horridus, ultracaudatus. Well, they lumped it all back together to protect them better, so they're now all Crotalus horridus, so they don't have a subspecies of ultracaudatus. However, they do have a different color coloration. I'm going to show you that. This is a typical one you're going to find here. This specimen was in Kibler Valley. So you're going to see some with an eye stripe, some without, like this one. But that's the typical pattern you're going to see here in Virginia. Now, if you go further south, South Georgia, South Carolina, the coast, you're going to see this, which is what we used to call a canebrake. You see the big stripe down it. Still has these chevrons, still has the same basic coloration. But they can be pretty variable too, but they're all going to have those chevrons across them like that. Just some of them, what I still call canebrakes, have this big, nice pink stripe down the middle of them. And they also get a lot bigger. I've caught canebrakes, over 5 feet. And I've never seen a timber rattlesnake that big, but once again, they're all in the same genus. As you get further in the mountains and the higher elevations, you're liable to see a black timber rattlesnake, just a gorgeous animal. There's a whole lot of varieties of that. You can see the pattern underneath them still. So Google is your friend. If you have a doubt, Google it. You can type in Greensnake in Virginia. If you just see a black snake in Virginia, snake with pattern in Virginia, whatever, but even in Virginia and North Carolina both, and you can do this on, North Carolina has a site, but Virginia is just great. Just type in snakes of Virginia. This is going to come up. It's going to scroll down. You're going to see everything right there, and it's going to give you a lot of information. So now you know a little bit more about snakes, and what I'm going to do right now is kind of drop this down, and I'm going to stop my screen sharing. Hopefully that worked, and hopefully you're just looking at me. And while we've got a few minutes left here, and I've got one chat in. Let me check that real quick. Okay, this is from Kathy Fell. This is an awesome point. If you use iNaturalist, enter a photo and a guess, and an expert will review it and let you know. She's absolutely right. That's a great one for plant ID as well. And sometimes you can just find it right away. So that's iNaturalist. It's an app. Thank you for that, Kathy. So I should be full screen here. Hopefully I am. I've got no feedback, so I'm guessing that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to show you real quick. We got a few more minutes here, some of my snakes and what we do and do with the kids. One of the first things I always do is I bring out snake skins, show them about shed skins. We talk about sheds. This is from a timber rattlesnake, and you can actually see the pattern on it. Pretty cool. You can see what we were talking about with the tails scales. You see the belly scales that go all the way across, and here's the anal vent, and then they keep going all the way across. And the rattle is gone. Why is that? Because the rattle is a modified scale. So it stays on the tail. That's the rattle of a rattlesnake. This rattle here is over 50 years old. Somebody gave that to me when I was a kid. So that's what happens with a rattlesnake. It's a modified scale. There's nothing in here that makes that noise. It's just the scales loosely hooked together and the dryness of the scale. So that's why when you see a rattlesnake skin, it's not going to have a rattle on the end of it, unless you had a live one or a skinned one. This is a scientific specimen of a western diamondback. So this is the actual skin of one, and they use this with the kids a lot. And they sell these in scientific warehouses, so they're not running out and killing these things. They're from ones that have died, and they keep the rattle on the end of it like that. So that's what a western diamondback looks like. This is once again, this is what I do with anytime we do these presentations. So Ellen Jesse's asking, is there a cost for the iNaturalist app? I don't know. Maybe Kathy, you can answer that for her. I don't have it on my phone, so I need to get it though, because I saw somebody using it the other day with plant ID, and it was really cool. I also talked to the kids about snakes' backbones, and I asked them if the snake has a backbone. A lot of people think they don't. Of course they do. They've got a great big backbone with a lot of vertebrae going all the way down. They're a lot more bendy than we are. And I show them a lot of different types of shed skins, how to identify snakes from the shed skins. Some have patterns, some don't. What you're mostly going to see, like up in your attic in Virginia and things like that, is the black rat. So here's a couple of black rat skins. You can see a little bit of pattern on the bottom of them, but they're basically just unicolor. But that's the shed skin that people find most of the time. And also, if you look, there's the anal plate there. There's the belly scales going all the way across. Here's the anal plate, and here's the divided belly scales at the end. Once again, don't use this as a key to venomous and non-venomous, but use it for the skins around here. It works in North America, works around here. So it's something that if you find it in your yard, you can tell what it is. All right, so another chat. Dennis Reeves, are there laws to protect snakes? Absolutely. And actually in Virginia, it is against the law to kill, excuse me, kill snakes. People do it anyway. Game wardens look the other way. I certainly understand when people are afraid of copperheads and they want to kill them in their backyard. They're afraid their kid's going to get bit or something like that. It's very rare that something like that's going to happen, but there are laws against it. Let me show you a couple here. So here's the most common snake you're going to see. This is a black rat, and let me see if I can get a little bit more light on him there. So this is a black rat snake, the Panthropus alleghaniensis, or the eastern rat snake. I still call them black rat snakes because I'm old school. You can see the head pattern there with those stripes on its lower chin. You won't see that on the black racer, but you do see that on the black rat. You also see this pattern on the bottom that goes all the way down. Now, once again, these can be highly variable, but this is an adult black rat snake. They can get a little over 6 feet. This one's a little over 5 feet. Beautiful snake, real shiny. I use these wild snakes all the time. I'll trade them out, find a wild snake. If it's particularly docile, I'll keep it and use it. And then release it later. So, show you what the young one looks like. This is a baby black rat snake. You can see that there. See the pattern on it. But it's gonna change as it gets to be an adult. So we got another question here. Do all snake species in our area den together during the winter? Venomous and non-venomous? No, not all species den together. The black rat snakes will den up with copperheads and timber rattlesnakes. Timber rattlesnakes and copperheads, it's common to see them denning together. Garter snakes like to all den together, the same species, but generally no. That's just something that happens a lot times. You'll see similar snakes. Now, obviously, if they're predator and prey, they're not going to be denning up together. But it's not something like you uncover a nest and all of a sudden there's a bunch of different kinds of snakes in there. Let me get one more out here while we're still here. And this is a great snake that I use with the kids all the time. I've got a couple of these. This is the Cornsnake or the red rat snake. You can see the pattern on that. It's also Panthropus, just like the black rat snake. They call these corn snakes because they would find them in cornfields and in barns, and also because the bottom kind of looks like Indian corn. Kind of cool. These are really variable. This was from Florida. This is a specimen that I got as a baby. Someone sent to me and raised it up. It's nice to raise him up. I can feel him actually vibrating his tail a little bit. It's against me right now, so he's a little bit upset. And so let me show you one more real quick because we're supposed to do this for 45 minutes, I think, but I'm going to stay on here a little bit longer. If you want to go ahead and drop off, that's fine. I'm going to keep showing a couple more snakes here while we got a minute. A lot of people ask me about albinism in snakes, and it does occur naturally in the wild, but we breed a lot of them to make them albinos. This is a corn snake, just like the one I just showed you. You can see that it has the, let me get him around here. You can see it has the red eyes, so it's an albino, but it also has some pigment to its skin. And there's a lot of varieties of these snakes that people do in the pet trade, and they breed them just like we do with plants and flowers and everything for specific looks. So they may breed them to make them more red, or they may breed them to make them amelanistic, which is a lack of black pigment, or they may breed them to be melanistic, which is a lack of red pigment. So it's like anything else, we can selectively breed these guys. I'm not crazy about albino snakes. They're kind of cool when you find them in the wild. This one actually was given to me by Clay Campbell. But they do make fairly decent pets. All snakes, not all snakes, but all the corn snakes do. Sometimes the albinos are a little bit more nervous and have a tendency to bite. But any snake, if you take care of it properly and you are handling it properly, that's the big thing we teach for the kids, is how to handle these snakes, to hold them. And you're hanging them up off the ground, so they want to be comfortable. It's really neat to see some people that are very naturally comfortable with stuff. They're not wiggling around a lot, and the snake knows that, and it just kind of calms down. Since they're cold-blooded and they can feel the warmth of your body, they really like that too. So that's another thing. As it gets warmer, when we do this outside, the snakes are much more active. But one of the things, if you're working with people and you're showing them snakes, try to keep always, people ask me this all the time, but keep the head away from people, especially new people around snakes, and tell them, don't put your hand around the heads, because even though snakes are not trying to bite you on purpose, that fast jerking motion, that could be food to them. It could also just be a defense mechanism. These snakes that I'm working with here, you can kind of mess around with their head all day long and they're not going to bother you, because I do this all the time to get them used to being held by people. I've got one more I'm going to show you real quick. Like I said, if you want to drop off, that's fine. Let me grab this other guy. I'll put them all back in the box here, or they'll be out in the kitchen when Patty comes home, and she probably won't appreciate that. This is one I didn't have on the slide, but we do have it in Virginia. This is called a pine snake. This particular specimen is from New Jersey, where they have some really nice looking pine snakes. I got this one as a hatchling. It was captive born. I have a pair of them, and a very, very beautiful, heavily bodied, neat animal. You talk about a garbage disposal. This guy will eat all day long. People always ask me, how often do you feed them, things like that. I feed them in the wintertime, summertime. I feed them as often as they'll eat, but I don't overfeed them. A lot of people will try to really pump their snakes up and get them really fat and really get them really big quick to breed for the pet trade. I don't do that. I try to keep them at their natural body weight so they're not overweight. So this guy right here, he would eat 5 or 6 adult mice, or half adult, subadult rat, something like that. And then I might wait, I might feed him that in about over a period of 3 days, and wait a couple of weeks and feed him maybe 5 more, and then he'll be ready to shed. So that's how they grow. They eat, and then they have to shed out of their skin just like we do, only they shed it out in one piece. So if you see a snake in the wild and he's got the blue eyes, that's what's happening. He's all dull looking. He's getting ready to shed. They can be a lot more aggressive at that stage because their skin's really sensitive. So do we have any more questions? Because I think I'm supposed to get off here at a certain time. I'll be glad to hang out. And guys, if anybody has any questions for me, you can find me on the website. You can email me. You can text me. I'm not sure if my number's on there or not, but it's very easy to get in touch with me through the website. Just bwilliams@danriver.org. If you got my phone number, I don't mind text or phone calls. And I tell people all the time, just send me a photo if you can. I don't even care if it's a hazy photo. We'll try to figure it out together based on where you find the snake. The main thing is to remember that they're a hugely important part of the environment, and they're awesome. When people say, "Oh, that's a good snake," excuse me, that's a good snake. That's not a bad snake. They're all good snakes. It's very difficult for me to see that and not respond to that. But they all have a purpose, just like everything else. Are you going to get bit by one? You're more likely to get bit by a poodle, that's for sure. You're more likely to get struck by lightning than getting bit by a venomous snake. And we hear this all the time. Well, I had one strike at me. I had one chase me. No, there's a million wives' tales you can hear like that. It's just not true. Snakes are in a defensive mode. They want to get away from you. you're 50 times bigger than them. They're not chasing you down. They don't want to eat you. They don't want to waste their venom. They don't want to break your teeth off, wasting it on you. So they're going to avoid you. You probably walk by copperheads in the woods all the time, never notice them. You probably walk by a lot of black rats and green rats that you never, green snakes that you never notice as well. So they're out there. Excuse me, they're out there. You just need to be aware of them. It's like anything else that you're got the knowledge, you're aware of them in your environment, and the knowledge is power. So Ellen, what are you saying there? Brian is my snake ID I have. Okay, well, thank you. You're my wildflower app. So Ellen Jesse is a wildflower person. She's my go-to with that. So yes, don't hesitate to email me, call me, even if you just describe a snake. Back before we had cell phones, back before we had cell phones, and I worked at the zoo, and people would call and they would describe the snake to you. Well, it's brown. Okay, yeah, a lot of snakes are brown. Does it have a pattern? Yeah, it's got some spots on it. Okay, are they spots? Are they oval? Are they checks? You can pin this down by just talking to people and asking, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, they're square shaped. Okay, well, that's probably a juvenile black rat. We go on from there. So usually I can do it from a description as well. But if you just call me up and say, I saw a brown snake that had some stripes on it, it's a little hard to do. So when you see a snake, you don't know what it is, try to look at those key features, just like you were looking at a plant or a bird or anything else. You're looking at the shape of the head. You're looking at the eyes, if you can see them. You're looking at the pattern. Does it have blotches on it? Does it have stripes on it? Does it have ovals? Does it have chevrons? Does it have Hershey's Kisses? What color patterns are on there? Is the base color brown, or is it really black, or is it maybe red or some type of orange? If you can identify those, number one, you're going to be a lot less scared of the snake because you're sitting there observing it and realizing that it's not chasing you. And number two, you can go to your app or your Google or me and say, this is what I saw. And we're going to be able to pin that down a lot better. But once again, Snakes of Virginia, go online, look at it. You can see the maps. And I suggest you go on there and just scroll down through there and look at all the photos. And if you click on the actual animal, it'll bring up many more photos to show you, so you can see the variety of them. But the range map is key. If you're in Henry County and you go, I'm pretty sure I saw a water moccasin, and you click on there, you go, oh, wait a minute, they're 300 miles to the east. They don't live anywhere around here. You can immediately rule that out. So anyway, once again, thanks for attending our webinar, and we hope to see you on some of the other ones. And don't hesitate to give me a call, give me a shout, give me an email. Be glad to help you out. Get out there, find some snakes, identify them, take some photographs for me. I'm working on a video for the Museum of Natural History for their remote reptile day, and try to get involved and help protect our environment. So I really appreciate it, and I'm going to try to figure out how to stop the recording here